All right, I wanted to come back and do a little bit of a tutorial on the new Mainstage Sampler. Um, Between the 2019 kind of marching band and pageantry seasons, Mainstage is updated and they included a new sampler. Lots of cool stuff about the sampler. Some things are a little bit more difficult, but just wanted to give you just a rundown of things that you're probably going to use it the most for within kind of a marching band and pageantry setting, which is most of what I do with Mainstage. So, if you're one of my bands, you probably have gotten a Mainstage file. Kind of looks like this. Has your parts up here, and then down here has an alias list, and the alias list is all the instruments that we use up here in the show are usually copied from here. And if we use something more than one time, I'll copy it from this list, usually as an alias. An alias, you'll notice if this top to A scene here, this light strings, that is a little green arrow. That means that that's an alias from somewhere else. So if you change anything on in the instrument, like if this were an omnisphere instrument, and you would come in and edit anything here, that's going to edit it for all of the patches. Some things that don't are the stuff that's within the Mainstage programming. So let's just say you would come down in here and come down into your MIDI input and change which MIDI controller was using this patch here. That wouldn't affect the others. Or if you come down in here and transpose, that wouldn't be affected on the others. Volume strip information here wouldn't be affected by other instances of this alias. So that's not really what this tutorial is about. It's mainly about the sampler. And the only reason I bring up the alias list is at the top. I could just put a blank sampler down here that you can copy from and paste it up into here if we ever need to mid-season add samples or anything to your show. So let's kind of go through a little bit of a rundown here of the sampler. And click on it, opens up this box. Interface is way different than the other samples, way different than the other samplers that we've kind of come across. First thing I think you always want to check when you're doing these new sampler instruments is out here on the synth menu all the way on the left. There's a attack, decay, sustain, release. In this first envelope down here, you want to take this velocity and move that velocity all the way down to 0. And what that's going to do is that's going to make your samples not touch sensitive. So no matter what volume velocity your player is using to trigger the sample, it is going to play back at the same volume. That's number one, what you want to do. Most of the other functions that you're going to use for just loading a one-shot sound effect are going to happen in mapping. So fourth tab over here, mapping. If you can notice, kind of gives you a little keyboard when it starts, and you can use your zoom in there to zoom in. So right now there are 3 samples, S24, 25, and 26. And within the Mainstage file, these are programmed with C, C sharp, and D. One thing to take a look at here, I like to take all these samples, highlight them, and slide them out so they have a full velocity range of 0 to 127. Make sure that range is full. Now, there's a couple ways to view the samples. In this, right next to zoom, there's your keyboard. Then there is a tab for groups. I'll explain that in a little bit. And then there is one here for, I'm not sure if this is zone, probably zone. But right here, this will give you all of your samples. And this menu, the Z, That's where you're going to start if you need to import a sample. So let's just say that I need to put in, I have a couple samples over here. This S46 deep tone, I need to add this. We wanted to add a little bit of a deep tone release to the end of a movement or something like that. I'm going to come in, click on this note from that folder. Now, this is kind of a pain. When you do that, it gets rid of that folder. So what I have kind of figured out how to do is just take your Mainstage window. Now it's going to go away. Take your Mainstage window, make it a little smaller. Then you can come over here and drag it into that list. All right, so now we got that deep tone sampler deep tone sample in there. There are a lot of different things, parameters that you can edit here. You can change your pitch. Oh, sorry, this is the key that triggers it. You can change your tuning. This is the range. So, like if you were taking one sample and you wanted to stretch it over top of multiple notes, you could do that. Mixer volume. This is the one that is going to be, I think, one of the most important things for balancing in your samples. This is how loud or soft. With the other sampler, you could go up to 12, or you could go all the way down to -96. And how I'm manipulating that is I just took my mouse, click the number, and I'm sliding up or sliding down. Or you can double click and type in your number if that works better for you. Over here, pitch and one shot. So these three samples were loaded and already kind of programmed when we started this. Right here, this one shot needs to be clicked. So it will, when you trigger it once, it'll play back the full audio file. And also pitch needs to be unclicked so that the pitch of the sample isn't tied to the pitch of the MIDI note that you put in. So from there, that's all good for our purposes. Now, if you want to make this zone view a little bit easier, you can right-click up here on this mapping. Right-click down here, like in this audio file name, and you can take these different parameters away. Like, for me, the pitch, the key range, not important. Velocity range, I'll leave there. I want to make sure that that's 0 and that's 127. Mixer volume, absolutely. For me, pan scale, not so important. However, that is all within your mixer, so you can't really get rid of that. You should keep your playback, and that's kind of what I would eliminate. If you eliminate those first couple, that gets your mixer right when you open it, and that's probably what you're most likely going to use. Now, as far as taking that new sample and figuring out where to put that on a key, that's where your little keyboard comes in over here up to the right. So I'm going to zoom out. There are 3 samples, C, C sharp, D. I'm going to zoom out. When you import a sample, it always is going to move that sample and put it in on C1. So now I can go in, highlight that sample, drag it. You can click on this little bar, make sure that that's your velocity range is 0 to 127. Now, if you're in the context of a rehearsal and you are trying to edit a volume, your player is probably going to be on the scene. Come in here, hit sampler, and it might pop up here in your synth menu, but you need to get to mapping. A couple different ways. You can zoom in on where you're at and the sample you're trying to make louder. Say we're trying to make this S46 deep tone louder. You can come in and click on that. Now that will play that back in rehearsal, so you're going to hear that sample trigger again. If that's okay, that's okay. Then you can come down here and take your volume and slide your volume up or down to balance that sample. If you don't want that to trigger back, you can come over into your zone, find your sample S46 deep tone, and then you can slide your mixer volume that way. That way, if you're trying to do things within the context of a rehearsal and not make a ton of sound, you can do that without that triggering back. So that's kind of the basic rundown. There is one kind of, I'll say, advanced feature. With the old Mainstage Sampler, you used to be able to layer multiple samples on top of each other on one key. Like, so if you would press like an E flat, that you could have 3 or 4 samples stacked on each other that would all play back. That's a little bit more complicated in the new sampler. So here's how you're going to go about doing that. That's where these groups come in. So if you go up here and you're all the way in your zone menu, you come up here to group and you create new. It's going to create a second group. Now, let's just say I want to have 2 of these deep tone samples stacked on top of each other. So I'm coming over here. I'm going to grab this S46 deep tone, and I'm going to import it into my second group. Do all of the other parameters, pitch, one shot, make sure that that's all good. Velocity range 0, 127, all good. Now you can come down here into your keyboard, and we'll zoom out. And now you're going to notice if you're clicked on this group 2, it's going to show you that sample that we just imported down to C1. If you click on group 1, these are the samples that we imported. So let's say we're going to load that on that E flat 4. Okay. So what I got to do when I click that played back this S46 deep tone, what I got to do is I got to click on group 2 and slide that up to E flat 4. So now if I highlight both, and I would go in and trigger these, you would see that my 2 deep tone samples triggered back. And the way I kind of figured that out, I was over here, I highlighted my full groups, both my groups, then I triggered that, and it's really kind of not hard to see what it just got triggered back, but if you come over to your Z, it'll show you in yellow what sample just got triggered last. So it'll show you that these 2 are there. Yeah, so that's that. A couple other things. If I think this is going to be useful for a lot of people, but not all people. You can now take and use flex time down in here on an individual sample. So let's just say we wanted to take this and edit that. You could edit that on some level. You can change the sample start time and end time fairly easily. So like this one, if I'm clicked on it, is that S46 deep tone. I can take this bar and cut this back. And let's just say I wanted my, my deep tone to go for 3 seconds and have a decay. I could take that, move that back. And then you see I'm moving that left one. What that's doing, that's putting a little volume dip down. So you hear like a little diminuendo from the sample going out. Same with over here. This deep tone, you want to start just a little bit later, take just a little bit of the attack off. There you go. That's going to kind of crescendo into that. So I think that, this is going to be helpful with maybe editing some samples on the fly that maybe in the past I probably would have went back into a workstation and fixed and cleaned up. That would kind of be helpful on the fly to kind of, fix things and do things that way. So that's a basic rundown on the new sampler. I don't think I'm forgetting too much as far as what you're probably going to need it most for marching band and pageantry. So hopefully this video was of help. I know the last video I did for the last Mainstage Sampler got viewed a decent amount actually. and had a couple people reach out about an updated video for this new sampler. So, all right, hopefully you enjoy. I'll see you later.